Hi everyone, if you're a subscriber, welcome back. If you're new to my channel, my name is Riley. Welcome to my garden. Today we're talking about growing eggplants in containers. So taking eggplant from this size, letting it grow in a container up to this size or larger, and being able to continually harvest fruit off it all season long. This particular eggplant was planted 6 months ago. I actually have cut the main branches all the way back to the soil. I had two small side shoots coming out, and I gave it a little bit more organic fertilizer about 8 weeks ago, 9 weeks ago. Cut those big shoots back, and I'll insert a picture of where I cut this plant. And in those 8 or 9 weeks, you can see the growth that has come back on this plant, and I've been continuing to harvest eggplant off this. Growing eggplants in containers is really easy. They're a very tolerant plant to grow. This variety is Orient Express from Johnny's Seeds, and if you're interested, I'll leave a link to these seeds in the video description below. So let's start talking about containers. Minimum size you want is 5 gallons, but bigger is always better when you're growing fruiting plants like this in containers. So this is approximately a 15-gallon container. I have 4 holes drilled in the bottom of it. This container is raised off the ground a little, and that's very important. You don't want your container sitting directly onto the ground because your water will not drain freely out of the container, and having water-logged roots is really bad for eggplant. You just want to avoid it. So make sure you've got holes in the bottom of your container. I use a 3/8" drill bit, and I drill 4 holes in the container. But make sure you've got that pot off the ground. Hey Bella, do you want to come make the video with us? All right, you can be in the video, kid. Make sure that's off the ground so that you can have free drainage coming out of that. Super important. So what do we need to grow this in? We need to have potting soil, not garden soil, not in-ground soil, regular potting soil. It's going to have perlite in it or expanded rock. It's going to help with aeration and drainage, and that's very important when you're growing in containers. But you don't want to just dump your potting soil into the container. What we want to do is we want to mix it up first with a little bit of organic fertilizer, and while I'm doing that, I'll explain why we want to mix this with organic fertilizer. I've put about a bag and a half, close to 2 bags of some organic potting soil in this container, and I've left about 2 to 3 inches on the top of the container, and that's also going to be important for us to leave that space, and I'll explain that towards the end of the video. But I'm not going to just take this plant, plop it in here, and then try to water this all in. And for 2 reasons. The first reason is I like to have my potting soil well moistened before it goes into the container where I'm going to be potting it in. And the other is I want to mix some organic fertilizer with this. Now this is Dr. Earth tomato vegetable herb. It's got a NPK rating of 463. That's fine. A lot of last season I was using down to earth vegetable fertilizer 444, which also worked great. Relatively even numbers of your NPK, an organic fertilizer for vegetables is going to be perfect. You don't have to be too picky about what it is. Directions on the back about how much to mix in. But we don't want to mix it into this container because it's going to be too difficult to get it really mixed in without spilling all this potting soil everywhere. So we're going to put it into another container, about half of this. We're going to mix half the amount of the fertilizer that I need into this container, get it well mixed together, and then repeat that process until it's all mixed in. So just gonna some in here. Why do we need to put fertilizer in there? Well, the organic potting soil normally says feeds up to 3 months. Well, I've had this plant growing more than 6 months, and I just have found that it's a good idea to give it a little bit more nutrients. You're not going to be worried that if it's not growing well, that it's a matter of not having enough nutrients in the plant. And it has worked really well for me. So I'm just going to mix this up a little bit. That. Add the rest in here. I'm going to add the rest of the fertilizer I need to. I'll mix that in really well. This. All right, perfect. All right, now we're going to put a little bit into this container. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to water this in. I'm going to mix that up, get that all moist, and I'll repeat that process. But I need to get my hose. Just going to mix this up till it's moist. That's great. Add a little bit more in. I'll mix this up. This ensures that you really have your potting soil moist in all areas of the pot before you transplant your plant. And again, I have just found my plants do much better if I plant them this way, and then instead of trying to get this all moist after I've transplanted. And that's because this is probably 75% peat moss. And peat moss is a great retainer of water, but you have to be able to let it soak in first. So when you just put it in the container and try to water it in deeply, I have just found that it does not. It takes a lot of water to make sure that container is fully moistened. So we're almost done here. Wash myself off a little bit. All right. Next thing I'm going to do, take my plant with the pot and push it in, make an indentation right in the center. Take that out, put it right in there, cover it up. I do not plant the eggplant deep. I don't cover the roots or the stem with the soil. I just put it just like that. And final step is we want to add some mulch on the top of this, and the mulch will ensure that this doesn't dry out prematurely, and it will make sure that the moisture is not evaporating, it's staying in the container, and it's really a great way to garden, especially in hot weather. Hang on, I'll go get the mulch. I've left 2 to 3 inches at the top of this pot, and what I'm going to do is take some hardwood mulch. This is my favorite mulch I think I've ever used. It's sown locally here in South Texas where I live. It's called Texas native hardwood mulch, 100% natural, no colors, no dyes. When I'm done with this mulch at the end of the season, it ends up going into my compost bin most of the time. Mix it with my grass clippings. Just adds to the bulk of my compost that I make every year. This year I did really well with my compost. In fact, today I've been all day long sifting compost. I did 1, 2, 3, 4. I prepped 5 beds today in the garden. Put in 2 to 3 inches of compost from my compost bin back there, and covered it with mulch. Did a lot of transplanting today. We've got the fall garden 75% ready, so that's exciting. So you can see I've left a gap around the plant where I put the mulch in. This again will make sure that it retains water, that water doesn't evaporate too quickly. You'll find this type of eggplant, though, is very easy to grow. Even if you forget watering, you let it go dry, it is really an easy plant to grow, and you get a ton of fruit off of it. That's all there is to it, folks. Growing eggplants in pots. If you've got any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section. If you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. We'd love to have you on the channel.